Thank you for attending the Joining Forces for Sustainable and Livable Cities webinar, co-organized by the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and Business Environment Council, or BEC. I'm Denise Wong from BEC's Policy and Research team and your host today. Now, for a few housekeeping rules, today's seminar will be recorded, so please feel free to revisit the content when the webinar is later uploaded to BEC's website and YouTube channel. Participants are all muted by default. If you have any questions or comments for our speakers, please use the Q&A or chat functions at the bottom of your screen, and we will address them during the panel discussion. Without further ado, may I invite Mr. Simon Ng, Chief Executive Officer of BEC, to give us his welcoming notes. Simon, please.
Well, thank you, Denise. Consul General Mr. Vandenberg, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and a warm welcome to Business Environment Council. To the speakers and audience joining from Europe, a good morning to you all. I am extremely pleased to co-host today's webinar with the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, joining forces to discuss the planning and creation of sustainable and livable cities for the current and future generations. The Netherlands is famous for many things, from tulips and bob fields, windmills, cheese markets, Klompen, canals, polders, to Vincent van Gogh, Johan Cruyff, and total football. I would also like to add sustainable and eco-friendly cities to the list, with Amsterdam, The Hague, and many other Dutch cities springing to mind. The topic of today's webinar is close to my heart. As a geographer, I study transportation and the urban landscape. I understand the importance of a sustainable living environment to people and their well-being. And I'm intrigued by the smart use of blue-green infrastructure and human-scale design to recreate green spaces in concrete jungle like Hong Kong. City livability is also highly relevant to BEC and our members and the business community, as it is one of the key factors in attracting and retaining overseas talents. For Hong Kong as a city, having a long-term sustainable development strategy is critical to balance the needs for large-scale urban development on the one hand, and the commitment to achieving carbon neutrality in the coming decades on the other hand. I also want to say a few words about World Environment Day, which is the primary reason we put this event together in early June. Led by the United Nations Environment Programme and held annually on June 5th since 1974, World Environment Day is the largest global platform for environmental public outreach and is celebrated by millions of people across the world. Hashtag Only One Earth is the campaign for World Environment Day 2022, which calls for collective and transformative action on a global scale to celebrate, protect, and restore our planet. I am sure this joint webinar will contribute to the local discussion on designing and planning a green city, as well as to the global agenda on a sustainable planet. We are privileged today to have a lineup of local and Dutch experts on landscape design and architecture, biodiversity, sustainability, engineering, and city transformation. So please join me, sit back and enjoy them. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. May I also invite Mr. Arjen van der Berg, Consul General of the Netherlands, for an opening remark. Mr. van der Berg, please.
Good afternoon, good morning. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the second in a three-part webinar series presenting Dutch solutions for greener cities. I firstly take the opportunity to thank, in no particular order, and with heartfelt gratitude for their contribution, the Development Bureau of the Hong Kong SCR government, the Airport Authority of Hong Kong, Wouter Jochemsen from Sempergreen and Martin Probst from MLA Plus, Deborah Tan, Director of China Water Risk, also for your last minute availability, Betty Liu, my perseverant collaborator at the Consulate General, and our partner today, the Business Environment Council, Simon Ng and his team. With green city initiatives popping up around the globe, it's a great time to raise awareness of how greener cities contribute to climate change adaptation, overall physical and mental health, and biodiversity. Greener cities reduce air and noise pollution, ensure water storage, and contribute to cooling during warmer periods. According to Wageningen University, the importance of green cities shows up as follows. Firstly, positive effects on climate change. Trading a traditional roof for a green roof with grass and moss can reduce the roof's temperature and the spaces below. Secondly, increased well-being and better health. Parks, waterfront, private backyards, not only do they look beautiful, they also contribute to a happier and healthier living and working environment. And just today, there was an article in the SCMP on the abuse, basically, here in Hong Kong of smaller in-between spaces and how important it is for a city like Hong Kong to pay more attention to the value of these spaces. Thirdly, green spaces reduce stress, increase happiness, boost creativity and vitality, which are very needed in these pandemic times. Studies show that hospital patients with views of trees needed up to a third less heavy painkillers than those with greenery to look at. I look forward to the upcoming introductions and discussion, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vandenberg. To kickstart the webinar, please welcome Ms. Deborah Tan, Head and Director of China Water Risk, to give us an introduction of today's webinar.
Right, Hi, thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction and also for having me here today, even though as a last-minute moderator. I think perhaps one of the reasons why I'm here, I mean, I wear a water hat, but I think water is also an integral part of nature, landscapes, and design of a city. It can also be a threat to a city through floods, droughts, and so on. And also, you know, for a lot of Asian cities, rising sea levels are also going to cause impact. And so how can we future-proof our cities by greening them, making them water resilient? How can we sort of like combine blue and green landscapes together to sort of form more livable cities and more sustainable cities is an important conversation to have, especially now when we're actually feeling the climate impacts, right? So we're very pleased. I'm not going to sort of talk more about this because I think Simon and Ian have also sort of like mentioned that. So I think without further ado, let's just jump into the discussion here of the sharing. I will ask the speakers first before we start to keep your sharing to 10 minutes. I will stop you or wave wildly at you to let you know that your time is up. But let's start off with, you know, we have some distinguished speakers here from David Yuan, who's the Assistant Secretary in the Landscapes Department of the Development Bureau, Martin Putnam from the Hong Kong Airport Authority in the House, physically present in the meeting. And we also have two dialing in from the Netherlands to sort of share their views on this. I will introduce them one by one. So I think without further ado, let's jump in. And let me invite David Yuan from the Development Bureau to let us know how Hong Kong is going green. David?
Thank you, Deborah. Good afternoon, everybody. I am David Yuan from the Development Bureau of the Government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. We are honored to be invited by the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the Business Environment Council to present the topic, Going Green and Staying Green, Urban Forestry Strategies in Hong Kong to you today. Let's start with some background information of Hong Kong. With a total land area of about 1,114 square kilometers, the city is the home of 7.4 million people. Yet, most of this population is concentrated in some 280 square kilometers of built-up areas, which occupy only about 1/4 of the total land area. Under such a setting, even the vast majority of land is vegetated. Only relying on the rural greenery may not allow much experience of the green to the city dwellers living in the urban parts of Hong Kong. To tackle with this situation, the concept of urban forests may offer the clue. Forest assets are vital components to a city, which include natural greenery in both urban and rural areas, such as slope greening and the countryside, and also include landscape areas such as parks and roadside greeneries. Urban forestry can offer multiple benefits to the city. In terms of living environment, it improves air and water quality, moderates temperature, and enhances ecological environment. On social health aspect, it promotes physical and mental health, enhances quality of outdoor spaces, and connects the community. So, Hong Kong's urban forestry strategies aim to strengthen Hong Kong's resilience against climate change for becoming a more livable and sustainable city. In the rest of my presentation, we shall cover the key initiatives we have been taken to go green, as shown on the slide, and then we would move on to the initiatives to stay green. For going green, the promotion of quality greening is undoubtedly one of the key strategies. Guidelines have been issued on the provision of minimum total greenery areas, including vertical greening and roof greening, and the minimum at grade greening areas for new government developments of different site sizes. Similar guidelines were also set for private developments for cohesive effect. Apart from setting green space, the government also earmarks plant resources to maintain the vegetation to ensure the sustainability. And both the quality of greening and quantity of greening have been enhanced in various types of projects. Here are some examples. At the top is the infrastructure project of the Lin Tong Hangyunwei boundary control point. At the bottom is the educational facility of a new school in Kwun Tong. And on the left is the medical facility of Kai Tak Children's Hospital. More examples here. At the top is the Tuen Mun Zhangjui Garden of Remembrance and Columbarium. And at the top right-hand corner is the recreational facility of the Koshan Theatre New Wing. And at the bottom are the green roofs of the Central Wan Chai Bypass. Apart from individual buildings, urban parks also play an important role in the fabrication of urban forests. The above is showing an example of urban park at Tema, the Admiralty of Hong Kong Island. While green buildings and parks serve as docks of urban greenery, roadside greenery serves as lines to connect the docks to complete the network. The government has therefore setting special requirements for quality greening along new and grade roads in this regard. Blue-green infrastructure is another crucial element in the sustainable development. Through comprehensive planning and enhancement of vegetation and water bodies, they can work with the natural ecosystem to promote biodiversity and to prepare for climate change. One of such blue-green elements is the rain garden, which is still quite a new concept to the general public of Hong Kong. In this pilot project located at Princess Margaret Road in Kowloon, educative signage has therefore been installed to demonstrate benefits of rain garden to the general public. Rainwater harvesting for irrigation is another common blue-green design element. And sometimes multiple blue-green elements will be adopted together in a single development project for cohesive effect. This example is a urban park development at the Changguan O waterfront, which is targeted for completion by the end of 2024. As some of you may be aware, this coastal site at Changguan O was frequently flooded or attacked under heavy rainstorm and typhoon. The adoption of blue-green design elements is taken as a means to tackle with such site challenge. In this diagram, the blue-green elements adopted in the project are illustrated. Green roof and artificial water body will increase evaporation and reduce heat island effect. And water harvest from the green roof and rain garden is stored at underground storage tank for irrigation purpose. Zero irrigation system would also be in place to supplement potable water consumption, whereas the rain garden, bows well, and permeable paving would alleviate pressure to the drainage system under the peak flow. River revitalization and eco-shoreline are other blue-green elements which promote water-friendly culture and enhance biodiversity. In the case of the Kai Tak River, boulders and plantings are replacing concrete drainage channels in river revitalization works. In the Tung Chung New Town development under construction, that is the New Town extension, mangrove shoreline has replaced traditional seawall to echo with the natural mangrove colony in the nearby Tung Chung Bay area. While the blue-green design focus more on the new and future developments, the government has also been implementing the greening master plans, which aim to optimize greening opportunity in the already built-up areas. Here are some examples of the effect of some completed works on the Hong Kong Island and in the Kowloon side. After going green, we shall move on to elaborate how we could stay green. The government has implemented a series of measures to conserve our precious natural landscape and vegetation resources. For example, tree preservation guidelines and requirements have been laid down for both private developments and public works projects. On the other hand, the establishment of the register of old and valuable trees record trees of large size, precious or rare species, outstanding form, and historical significance for enhanced protection measures. Trees, like other living organisms, have a natural cycle. They grow, age, become weak, and die. Life cycle management is therefore another important agenda on urban forestry strategies, in particular for a clouded city like Hong Kong. The Hong Kong government is indeed maintaining about 1 million number of trees, and the tree maintenance departments are conducting annual tree risk assessment and management, namely TRAM exercise, to assess tree risk and implement necessary mitigation measures to minimize potential hazard to the public. The government has also developed the handbook on tree management to provide private property owners guidelines and standards of good practices on tree management. Apart from TRAM, phased replacement of trees with potential risks is another life cycle management initiative. For aging vegetation, such as the aging acacia trees along our roadside slopes, which are declining at about the same time, proactively replacing them with native vegetation could effectively reduce the risk of failure and at the same time enhance biodiversity. Nurturing expertise is another important aspect to stay green. After all, the effective management of our urban forests heavily rely on the work of relevant expertise. In 2020, the government established the Urban Forestry Support Fund to encouraging youngsters to join the arboriculture and horticulture industry, uplifting the professional standards and strengthening public awareness on proper tree care. We are also organizing regular international urban forestry conference and a variety of community involvement events, such as school talks and workshops, to foster industry development and inspire the young on the concept of greening. Looking to the way forward, development of urban forests plays a key role in making the city more livable, competitive, and sustainable. Under the troubled epidemic era, never before have the benefits of environment and well-being been more essential and more in demand. Urban forests provides much more than fresh air, exercise, and quiet time. It also offers therapeutic and restorative value at community and personal levels. Developing our city in close concert with nature is one of our future development strategies. Only with the concerted effort from the public and private sectors, as well as the general public, that a more sustainable and green community could be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yun. Next, may I invite Mr. Martin Putnam, Senior Manager, Biodiversity, Sustainability of Airport Authority Hong Kong, to share with us landscape and greening challenges, commitments, and innovation at HKIA. Mr. Putnam, please.
Thank you, and thanks to BEC and the Consul General of the Netherlands for inviting the Airport Authority today. I think I'm going to talk about, of course, the airport, and I'm going to cover landscape and greening challenges, commitments, and I hope you'll agree, innovation to the airport. Of course, setting the scene, I think green infrastructure, sustainable ways of living, harmony with nature, developing a coexistence of infrastructure, urbanization, and nature to support an eco-friendly and balanced lifestyle. I want to start by saying that I think Hong Kong has a fantastic baseline for these very themes. We have a very dense urban environment, but also within a stone's throw of all those dense urban environments, fantastic outdoor areas and also water environment too. So just a plug for the great environment that we have in Hong Kong. You know, we have a fantastic starting point for improving the urban areas, I think. Moving on, the airport is getting slightly more greener. Perhaps many people haven't seen the airport for several months or years. And there it is. There's been a lot going on out there. And that is the new third runway, which is 99% complete. That is now ready to commence operation middle of this year. And the existing center runway now will close for a couple of years while the other infrastructure completes. And in a couple of years, the 3-runway system will open up. I always like to look across the airport towards Lantau, which I think is one of those sort of green lungs it's a biodiversity jewel in Hong Kong. And, you know, supported with large areas of country parks. And we're sort of, it's great that we're on the north side of that. At the airport, we have a lot of challenges, and mainly they're to do with bird life, to be honest. And aeronautical safety is predicated on minimizing potential impact from birds in particular. And what we have is very strict planning restrictions. That green area, there is no planting in most of the airport. So I'm sorry, we're not going to landscape too much there, apart from bird repellent grass in around the taxiways. And there's actually very limited area at the airport. It's a highly intensive used site, and most areas not actually accessible to the public. But those areas, those strips that are, we try and concentrate on with some interesting landscaping. There's the airfield, and it looks green. This is probably exaggerated slightly, but there is no opportunity for landscaping there, including in most of the buildings. So that's quite limited, apart from those grassed areas. What we can concentrate on is a sort of strips, and there's a strip along the southern side of the airport, which is well used for cycling and running and so on. And also the strip up to the sort of gateway up to the terminals is an area where we can landscape, but very, very restrictive. And we have in the sort of purple circle, Scenic Hill, which is the only original part of the airport island, which is natural vegetation still, which is a real, it's quite a positive to have on the airport, I think. I think we don't have many publicly accessible areas, but we try to create an interesting landscaping for those people that wander across from Tung Chung, perhaps, or in the arrivals corridor that goes up towards the terminals. In terms of linking with Tung Chung, we've developed an airport trail, which has been regenerated in recent years. And it's a running trail and a walking trail, and there are interesting features along the way that add to the landscape value and the utility value of that strip. This is the bridge going across south of Scenic Hill. We put some more blossoms in earlier this year, and it was a major attraction immediately. It was amazing. People wandering over, hundreds of people taking photos of this sort of feature. So there's great opportunity. This is north of Scenic Hill, next to the Cafe City area. And we've created this sort of wellness park, which is part of the running trail. There's a kiln area also there. And it's a bit of a destination in itself. And you can run through there all the way up to the terminal building or walk, and it's more accessible. And those features will be enhanced as we finish the 3RS development and re-landscape a lot of that strip. Also, along those arteries of transport, there's opportunity for landscaping. This is existing, it will be enhanced, and as we re-landscape the area up to the terminals, arrivals and departures areas. This is the existing south of the Scenic Hill. We're also going to enhance, it's lovely natural vegetation up there, but along the path we will enhance in the next year or two with further peach blossoms, and that will be a real feature, I think, at the airport. And it has a spectacular overview of the airport. So this is very accessible from Tung Chung and is a great feature, I think, in the future. I think when you start going on the transport corridor towards the terminals, less opportunity. And I think you've seen our, sort of landscape features on roundabouts. They're not really publicly accessible, but they're green opportunities. And we have a real challenge at the airport with utilities, which is true of a lot of urban environments. There are utilities corridors, which can be a real spaghetti junction of activity under the surface. And you really can't plant too much there. So that sort of limits what we can do in conjunction with bird attraction limitations. And then, of course, you arrive at the terminals. I think the airport's a flow function, basically. It's hundreds of thousands of passengers a day normally, and hopefully that's returning soon. We'll use those corridors, train and car and bus, and arrive at the departures area. It is very congested. You can't do too much in those areas, but you can beautify it, and we are and will as we finish the T2 expansion. This is T2. And you can see also some of the greening around T2 that we're trying to feature. We can still have a very efficient roof without it being green on those huge span roofs. It's, we do the analysis, and having a non-green roof is probably comes out slightly better. So we pursue those for these sort of bespoke structures. And there you can see the plan view looking down on T2 and area. Those are the sorts of landscaping opportunity we have. And as you transfer into the building, this is the revamped T2, there are opportunities for making the normally stressful airport experience slightly less stressful, perhaps, and adding, value to your airport experience. Now, what's happening at the airport now is we're really improved our connectivity with the Greater Bay Area, and it's less of a flow through the airport. This area is becoming more of a destination, so perhaps there are more opportunities for landscaping here. In fact, it has a different land grant, and there is a presumption of 30% greenery in that area, which we don't or aren't able to achieve as an airport with a special function. This is going to be a real hub of entertainment, conference, office, hotels, and people will stay there perhaps for several days. But again, very restrictive in terms of planting. You can't have fruiting vegetation, and it is quite limited. So some of the planting towards the threshold of the South Runway won't be like that, or isn't like that. But what that leads to is really our focus in terms of adding value is eco-efficient buildings. We really place a lot of stock on having very efficient buildings, particularly in the new build. And this is a big challenge in Hong Kong, and an opportunity in Hong Kong. And the other interesting part of this development is there will be an autonomous link to Tung Chung, where people can also link into the airport and this destination from Tung Chung with these autonomous transport vehicles, and that's going to be an interesting feature. I think some of the later speakers are going to talk about the 11 Skies development, so I won't cover that too much, but it does look like a very green destination feature in the middle of the airport, which is slightly different from what we've had before. So in terms of green buildings, we've recently got cross-airport commitment for a green airport design construction strategy. And we've had this in place for the whole of the 3RS development, even before that. And we really focus on embedding green and eco-efficient design into our new developments at the earliest stage of the development cycle. And basically going through the bullets on the left is central to our developments. It comes in early. We look at the pros and cons of green designs over a project's life cycle. And green elements are then agreed at the design stage from, the most senior management possible. And then they're embedded in works packages and we check those. And if possible, there's a third-party certification that goes with that, like BEAM Plus or SQL for the civil engineering side. And that's the cycle. And then we monitor and check that the buildings are as efficient as they're supposed to be. That's the typical sort of improvement. You start at a baseline with that blue diagram on the left and look at the lighting, you look at the cooling, and you work on improvements below the baseline that you start with. And that's the same for all aspects of the building. So it's a real thorough process. And we've generated some really excellent building standards from that. Just some of our achievements, the T2 expansion, these are whole project cycle commitments. So we've got a platinum rating in our provisional assessment for the expanded T2. And for Skybridge, which completed a couple of years ago and is now in place, we got a BEAM Plus Gold provisional assessment. For the third runway, T2 concourse, I should say, we've got a BEAM Platinum again, and that's a long process working with the Green Building Council. And it's a very positive and an outcome with good, a process with a great outcome. We also look at the non-building parts of our development. And of course, we've got the airfield and the infrastructure associated with that. And we pursue SQL for that. Again, it's a whole team award, starts at the very beginning and tracks right through. And you get the best quality rating as you go through that process. Also, we require our business partners to look at green design, and we will increasingly require that they do that as part of our strategy. And we have BEAM Plus projects, as you can see. Interestingly, also the Sky City development, or the 11 Skies development, has a platinum rating for its office development. The hotels are gold or platinum that are being developed there. And we push this strategy across the whole of the building stock that's coming on at the airport. We also regenerate our existing buildings and make sure we have the latest technologies, LED, more efficient chillers as these buildings age and these things need to be replaced. I'm conscious I'm nearly out of time, but if I've got time for the innovation part, I'll carry on. Of course, we have just been through the major reclamation, and we did an EIA for that reclamation with many, many difficult commitments and conditions. One of those is the designation of a marine park, which will actually link two existing marine parks and form an area of nearly 5,000 hectares of protected area. And so that was a mitigation measure. We also have an enhancement commitment, which is developing a marine ecology and fisheries enhancement strategy. Part of that is creating funds, and we've invested 400 million Hong Kong in enhancement funds, which will fund projects which may be beneficial to biodiversity into the future. We also, if you look at the box on the right of that figure, we're doing various enhancement pilots. And rather than just go ahead with releasing some fish or putting some artificial reefs in, we're doing pilot tests, monitoring whether they're effective. And if they're effective, we will scale them up as the marine park is, or in coordination with the marine park designation, which will happen during 2024. So we'll try and enhance the marine environment. I know it's not landscaping, terrestrial landscaping per se, but we're trying to add value to the marine environment in the greater North Lantau Marine Waters area, which I think we have influence over. And these are some of the initiatives. I mean, we install various eco seawalls. Those aren't going to be scaled up. They're already in the seawall, it's finished. But the fish restocking, we install, we monitor, and we scale up if it's beneficial. Same with the coral transplantation. We've moved all the soft corals, or many of the soft corals, and that was successful. We can move them back to the new seawall, although it's already colonizing with new gorgonians. And artificial reef, we're looking at whether that works. And if it works, we'll scale up, probably in the airport restricted area, not in the marine park, you know, in the area around the airport where there's very limited boat travel, and that will have spillover effect into the marine park. And shellfish, we're looking at oyster reefs along those 13 or total over 20 kilometers of seawall that we have at the airport. You know, we're doing sections now, see if it has benefit. If it has benefit, we'll scale up. Anyway, that's really a synopsis of what we're doing. And if you have any, there's lots on our website, not just on biodiversity and marine ecology and landscaping, but on all sorts of other areas, including our carbon commitment and our progress on the project, you can see very clearly. So please do link to those websites. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Putnam. May I invite Mr. Walter Johansson, Director of Global Business and Partnerships, Semper Green Group, to give his talk on Green City of the Future. Mr. Johansson, please.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Let me start my video. Hopefully you can see me now. I'm going to give a presentation about green cities, how we see it, what's our view on it. And I will share my screen now. That's it. Once again, thank you for inviting me. Before we start, I would like to tell something about our company. Semper Green is established 26 years ago in the Netherlands. We started with growing blankets that are used for green roofs. But by now we are the supplier and manufacturer of full systems for green roofs, but also for green walls. We're doing this all around the world. We have branches in Latin America, in North America, in Europe, in Australia, and we work with partners, like for example in Hong Kong, to make the world a bit greener. On an annual basis, we are realizing about 7,500 projects. These are green roofs and green walls, and this is approximately 1.5 square meter of green, what we're adding every year to the world. We're mainly focused on making building greens. This is me, Walter Johansson. I'm a board member of the Semper Green Group. It's my goal to expand all over the world because we believe making the world greener is not only for Europe or only for Hong Kong, but we want to include, in fact, all the countries in the world to do the same. That means also for each country, we're trying to find solutions, green infrastructure solutions that are suitable. Someone I really would like to mention is our partner in Hong Kong. This is Herman Au. Herman Au is already our partner for the last 10 years. And Herman Au is also working at this moment on the Sky City 2 development. He's installing there a green wall of 4,500 square meter. One moment. Oh, you're not seeing my screen? That's, no. I think something went wrong. Let me go quickly back to the earlier sheets. I hope you did hear what I said. This was about Semper Green, what I was telling. I hope you did hear me. This is myself. This is Herman Au I was talking about. Herman Au is working on the airport project at the moment, Sky City. He's installing a green wall of 4,400 square meter. Unfortunately, I did not include this in the presentation because I was expecting this to be in the previous presentation. Maybe we have time afterwards to share it. The challenges we're seeing today with green cities is, well, we don't have green cities because what we have are concrete jungles. In the past, everything was a nice green jungle. Our cities are growing with 1 or 2% per year, at least. Our population is growing with 1 or 2%, and we see that more and more people are moving into the cities. Unfortunately, in the existing cities, in a lot of cities, we forgot to add green. And by forgetting to add green, we caused 3 major problems in the city. Probably you already know them, but I want to share them with you. The first one is stormwater. We see that the climate is changing. We're getting more and more rain. And if it rains, we get many more liters in a short period, much more rainfall in a short period. So what's happening, because the floor is asphalt of the city or stones or tiling works, the water has no place to go. And the sewage system gets overloaded and we get floods. Well, because of these floods, people become homeless. There's economical damage, something we don't want. The second problem is the heat island effect. Because there's almost no green elements, no green surfaces in the cities are heating up. And you can see that inside the city, it's 3 to 4 degrees warmer than outside. So the cities are not really pleasant to be in warm summers. The third problem I like to address is the loss of biodiversity. Because there's no green areas, there is no place more for insects, for bees, for small animals. And this is also affecting the whole ecosystem around the cities. So this is also something we can do something about. Then our view on green cities. What we're doing with our company, we're making green solutions available for the building. What you can see on the presentation are green buildings with a green roof. That's where normally everybody starts. A lot of people are telling me like the roof construction cannot hold a green roof. Sometimes that's the case, but now we make systems that only have a load of 35 kilos per square meter. So there's much more possible than people think. It's the same for green walls that goes from 45 kilos per square meter. So if you do some research, you will find out that a lot of buildings actually can do some greening on it. I want to share you some examples from all over the world that we did. This is a green city, in fact, in the municipality of Almere. This was a requirement of the government that all the buildings were getting green roofs. And this has all to do with the stormwater capacity of the drainage system. The builder did it and it actually looks quite nice, but it also does work. Another project on the left, this is a project from Ballast Nedam in the Netherlands. Big developer, this is a residential house and they want to fight urban heating. So this works. On the right side, it's the same. It's in Germany. Same concept, only what they're doing here is also collect the rainwater from the roof and they're reusing it for the green wall. So it has 2 benefits. Project in the US, everybody recognized the symbol. I'm not going to say the name, but this is the first sustainable branch of this fast food chain. And they're going to use this concept, and in fact this is a green city concept, for a few more of their branches in the US and hopefully also in Hong Kong and in Europe. This is an interesting one, a building of 90-meter height built in Germany at the moment. They wanted to boost biodiversity. It's under construction, but we did a lot of tests and you can see even with a building like this, by just making the columns green, you can add a lot of green to the city. But it doesn't always have to be a big building. It can also be, as you see here, on a bus shelter. These are pictures from Amsterdam and from the Utrecht municipality in the Netherlands. They're small projects, but if you come here in the summer, you will see the bees flying around. Well, the benefits, people already told before me what are benefits, actually from the starting of this webinar, but I would like to highlight them again. By adding a green roof, you can catch buffer rainwater. 10 years ago, you could hold the water for about 30 minutes and then it would be released to the sewage system. There are systems now that can buffer the water for about 2 days, and only then on a natural way they will release it. So there's no mechanical equipment involved. It's all done on a natural way. And these roofs can take 45 to 80% of their volume in water. Biodiversity, that's the other big benefit. And I'm going to tell something about the picture on the left. This is the Slovenian pavilion at the Expo 2020 in Dubai. This whole area was surrounded by desert. And what was happening here is that after we installed it, after 2 weeks, all kind of insects were coming. So then there was a lot of discussions, do we want this? Do we want this green wall to attract insects? Because guests might not like it. The nice thing was that a few days after all the insects came, the birds came. And then this became its own biotope. And really, people really loved it, because this is the perfect example how to add biodiversity. And even what happened, there was a beehive that came in this building to establish there. Then another benefit is the cooling effect. Green cools down because plants evaporate. And it's reducing that urban island effect that we were mentioning before. And it's actually cooling down the city with 3 or 4%. Other benefits are sound reduction. How more green you add, how less noise becomes. Plants add oxygen and absorb CO2. But the best of all, and one of the speakers was already telling that, green feels good. You get higher feeling of well-being for the people, less stress. Sick people recover faster. A lot of benefits. They do a lot of research about this, but I would say go for it. And I'm already over my 10 minutes, so thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Johansen. Up next, please welcome Mr. Martin Probst, Associate Director, MLA Plus, to share with us nature as leverage, systems, places, actions. Mr. Probst, please.
Good. Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me share you some thoughts on how we can use nature as leverage for development. Our company, MLA Plus, has 200 experts in the fields of architecture, landscape, and urbanism. And what we bring also maybe to this table here is quite a unique mix of experiences between Europe and the Greater Bay Area. Our office started in the early 1990s in the Netherlands, where we started to plan water-related neighborhoods. And we grew into quite a respected master planner and architects, both in the Netherlands as well as in London. And we also stand for actually another big important feature of the Netherlands, that is sharing knowledge around the world, exporting expertise. So since about 2010, we're quite active around the globe, including the Greater Bay Area. And a situation that we meet often at the beginning of projects is that we actually find a really beautiful location that is already in the process of urbanization. And the question is, we've raised that before, what type of city do we want? Do we really want to have a concrete jungle? What we have learned from our experience between Europe and Asia is that as professionals, we can really make a difference. We can achieve more. And this is what we have developed the methodology of nature as leverage for, as a method that stands for a new balance in development, where not economy and urbanization comes first, but where we use nature as a tool for development. And this methodology has 3 layers. One is a system layer where through a focus on blue and green and public space systems, we try to create synergies that go beyond just infrastructure. Then we design places, often as a combination of master planning, landscape and architecture, neighborhoods, parks, buildings. And then a third scale that is quite important is a scale that is focused on the actions of how to make it happen. And this is an approach that is very much aligned with the agenda for the 22nd century that was published at the beginning of the year by the board of the government advisors for spatial quality in the Netherlands. So I'll use some examples from your region actually to talk you through what I mean with these 3 layers. The first example on this synergetic systems layer comes from a place about 100 kilometers northeast of Hong Kong. We've been invited to develop a vision for the area of Shenzhen coast as a project that we have done from our office here in Rotterdam, together with Okra landscape architects from the Netherlands and supported by Sustainability Planning Institute from Shenzhen IBR. It's an area that is 15 kilometers long. It's quite a narrow zone between a coastal mountain range like we have in Hong Kong and the sea. And that is equally, we've heard it already before, threatened by extreme climate change, but is also threatened by human use and urban development. And this project on the system level includes 3 strategies. And I'll elaborate a little bit the ecology and protection strategy because they're quite essential for us that it comes first. It includes, on one hand, a seawater strategy of how to protect the site against the sea along the coast. It includes a freshwater strategy and an ecological framework. And following Dutch principles of nature-based solutions, we integrated the seawater strategy into the development of a coastal landscape strip and coastal landscape park. The freshwater strategy, which looks at the rainwater that comes down, the stormwater, was quite comprehensive because it didn't only cover the city areas, it also included the mountain ranges and how we can slow down water in that area. And these 2 strategies together then resulted in a blue-green system that became the basis for urban development as much as for habitat development. And the habitats we've heard already about are the typical land habitats, but I'm quite excited to hear that the airport also starts to consider the sea habitats, which is something we quite commonly do in the Netherlands, to also think about what happens along the water edge and also what happens below the water. The beauty of this is that the blue-green system solution does not only benefit nature, but it responds to climate change, as we've heard, but it also serves mankind. Because what this system actually creates is a quite rich experience of nature. And from the Netherlands, we know how important this is as a factor to attract investment, to attract businesses, and to retain talent. And only after this first layer of blue and green oriented system planning, then we thought about urbanism and how it follows and how it is in synergy with the blue-green natural systems. And quite importantly, only in the last layer, we considered infrastructure. We developed a mobility infrastructure system that is based on green mobility, on walking, cycling, and light rail, to really plan an area that is not really featuring the typical big roads that are such a big problem of the urban jungle. So the second layer of our methodology of nature's leverage is the design of places. As I said, neighborhoods or public spaces or buildings, which usually integrate master planning and landscape and architecture quite a lot. So, for example, the Shenzhen Mangrove Museum includes all the nature-based solutions. We've heard a few of them. They're really part of the technical design and of the future operations of the buildings. It's great to see that the Hong Kong airport also, does all of these things. But I think quite importantly is that the nature-based solutions are also an important part of the vocabulary of experiences of people, that they really feel nature with all their senses when they visit the building and their surroundings, because the change of lifestyle, the change of mentality of people will be really, really important in the future developments of our city. So this project is Shangmi Park in Shenzhen, which is the first nature-based community park, which has a landscape design and a water design that really works with local ecological principles, and where we balance highly programmed spaces with zones of wild urban nature. where we created low-tech buildings with natural ventilations that help people to experience the beautiful climate of your region. And it's such a pleasure to see how, proud people are actually, and how they start to come and visit more and more often and start to introduce actually new types of lifestyle into their everyday life, away from only work, but actually towards recreation in green and together with green, in harmony with nature. So the last but not least layer of our strategy we call enabling actions. Because doing all of this and actually reaching out to a kind of new and more integrated level of planning is quite complex. So what we have learned is that it's really important to have a good understanding and a really face-to-face collaboration with local players. Because only with very good local understanding of the local forces and together with local actors, we can unlock this new potential. We must be really, really hands-on, and our government is helping us, for example, with this seminar. We very much appreciate it. And I will end my presentation with an example from Hong Kong. So, that it really shows an actionable result for each stage. So we've been asked by an NGO, Walk DVRC, together with other international firms, to envision the future of the public space in Hong Kong Central. Quite a complex task. And I don't want to dwell too much on the actual design that we've proposed, because I want to have a little bit of time to show you what actually we had as an actionable result later. Our proposal won, and it went into become a traveling exhibition around the area here to open the eyes of the public and to activate politicians and authorities to join the process. This was done on the street, in shopping centers, in retail areas around, really accessible, but it was also done on really high level business by design fairs in the Netherlands. And one of the key things that we invented and designed for this is a story. It's a story of a little girl. And the most beautiful comment that we got from the professional jury in Hong Kong was that when they saw this proposal, they thought that really it was done by a team from Hong Kong and not a team from the Netherlands. And maybe that stands for the power of Dutch storytelling, that this was possible. And I will end my presentation just with a few minutes of starting that presentation. I hope it works, that you can hear the sound as well, to get a spirit of this.
大家好，我係小花，我係一個小小嘅香港市民，同好多香港人一樣，我都同爸爸媽媽住喺高樓大廈入邊。每朝早我一起身，媽媽就會拖住我走過德輔道中。呢度好多車啊！走到呢度真係令到我好頭暈啊！有一次我發咗個夢，夢入邊我變得好細，啲街道呢就會變得好大。我呢就嘗試拆走啲欄杆。咁我就有一個好大嘅空間任我玩啦。我好希望我哋嘅街道同埋城市都可以變得更美好。爺爺話過俾我知，喺佢後生嘅時候，德輔道中係唔一樣嘅。嗰陣時，德輔道中係好寬敞。大家
So I'll end my presentation here. Please come and visit the whole film on our website. So on synergetic systems and with the design of future places and with the focus on enabling actions. I hope that I've showed you a little bit of how we can use nature as leverage for urban development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Probst. Now, let's move on to the panel discussion that will focus on creating green infrastructure strategies to support biodiversity and more sustainable ways of living in harmony with nature. Again, If you have any questions for the speakers, please feel free to type your questions using the Q&A function. May I invite Ms. Deborah Tan to moderate the panel discussion. Ms. Tan, over to you, please.
Thank you for that. Wow, those presentations were very wide-ranging, but also very inspiring, I think. And you know, I think I would like to live in a lot of those cities and buildings and projects. I don't even know where to start, but I think one common thread through all of those is that it requires a lot of planning, right? And that was very clear through all of those. So perhaps I can throw out a question to each one of you, kind of like in that kind of like broader concept. And it occurred to me that, you know, and the other thing that I thought was great was that blue, you know, water featured a lot in all these presentations, right? Blue, green, I think was everywhere, resounding everywhere, which is wonderful to sort of see. Maybe the question here is, you know, because these projects are so huge, David, maybe, you know, the question here is, do you involve the community and do you see any sort of like pushback and feedback from the community? Do they enjoy it? They might enjoy it later when they see the project, but they may not sort of understand that going in. So I'm just kind of like wondering if there are any challenges in these local communities where you build these projects, because, you know, something like Zhonghua and the Sponge City there, you know, would they welcome it because they sort of see that area being flooded all the time and so on. On that kind of like similar vein, you know, Martin, I think, you know, it's great to sort of see you kind of carve out little green spaces so that you can sort of like green the grey infrastructure. But, you know, something that you said at the end about the marine park, even though technically that's not green, like you sort of said, but it is a new innovation. And I think we won't think about the airport and the marine park together, right? So I was wondering about the thinking behind how you even got to sort of supporting a project like that, right? I'd just like to sort of share some thoughts on that, or any challenges, or you know, that you kind of carved out a huge fund for this as well from the airport, right? Why? The third thing is, you know, Uta, I love the fact that you're also rewilding cities and so on. I'm looking at these buildings and clearly it looks beautiful. But, you know, I'm kind of like also wondering, do you get a return on investment from these buildings, or is it just about making it beautiful? And also, obviously, it doesn't just look pretty, it does have other purposes as well, like cooling, you know, providing rainwater storage and so on. And it's fantastic that you've managed to sort of like up that to 48 hours or 2 days and not working mechanically as well, which is also great, right? And, you know, everybody else feel free to sort of like jump in on these kind of broad discussion topics. And lastly, Martin, I would like to call you Martin P, but then I actually realized that both of you are Martin Ps. So Martin from the Netherlands, you know, really also enjoyed the fact that you, you know, was sort of like putting your whole presentation around using nature as a lever. And, you know, some of the projects that you should have shared with us, you know, from the Netherlands, I mean, you know, even if I saw the projects in London to the Greater Bay Area, these are huge projects that would sort of take time to even design, curate, and come to effect, right? But do you sort of see that, and you've been doing this for a while, so do you sort of see this transition? Is it just a trend? Is it here to stay? You know, has there been a shift in mindset? Because the more people have sort of seen these projects, the more they want projects like this. Maybe you can set, you know, would love to sort of hear your some insights on that. So I'm going to stop talking now. And, you know, I'm relaxed as who wants to answer, go first. Maybe David's looking at me, David.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. And to start answering your question, I have to spell out a bit that our office, the Greening, Landscape and Tree Management section of the Development Bureau is indeed not the direct works agent directly implementing any works projects, but we have general understanding of the challenge and experience of other works department that maybe worth sharing here.
Yes,
and for the project implementation of, like, say, the project in Junquano waterfront or some other waterfront projects, we understand that project office will undergo some local community public engagement activities and like consulting the district council. And another example is the Harbourfront Commission. And we understand they have quite some number of projects which have high degree of involvement from the public. Like they have a scheme appreciation is HSS, maybe harbor sharing space. And they have invite innovative ideas of placing like some temporary art piece, street furniture, all kind of innovative uses in the waterfront area. So it is, I would like to see this as kind of let the public having the chance to be aware and maybe sort of soft education to that, oh, this is harbor waterfront and you can have that sort of activities, but there may also be some risk. They have to observe that there is like fence free or whatever. Yeah. So this is kind of progressively making people to be aware of the how to deal with the water. And also for linking to my presentation, our office is also engaging many workshops and school talks, and we want to inspire the young, the next generation, to be aware of greenery, to be aware of blue-green infrastructure, and so that they will have something in mind that this is important. And we also have more information, like we have been publishing from, we have issuing some pamphlets on urban forestry with more attractive illustration and descriptions on urban forestry strategies and blue-green infrastructure, which are all available from our website. So this is sort of our tactic to bring people to think about what we need in the blue-green and in the urban forestry, so that for the future implementation of such kind of projects, I think it will be useful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Sorry, Martin, Martin's looking at, Martin in Hong Kong is looking at me. So I'm going to
well, I was just wondering which of the many questions I can remember and which I should ask or should answer. I think I'll go for the Marine Park.
Yes, Marine Park
question. I think when we develop a mega project like the airport expansion, mm-hmm. we have to go through a very rigorous statutory process, mm-hmm. as well as a public consultation preceding that, to get general support for the project, not down to the scale of landscaping, but at least for the concept of a mega project. And then you go through a very, very rigorous statutory EIA process, and you have to try and reduce, mm-hmm. mitigate, compensate the impacts that you identify. Of course, one of our major impacts is a large reclamation, which encroaches into the marine environment, and we are required as a mitigation measure to support the designation of a marine park. That is an absolute legal requirement. Although it's actually AFCD that have to do that, we have to support that process. And the next step below mitigation is enhancement, and we can develop a strategy. We can try and, which is voluntary. It's not statutory. That we enhance what the marine park may bring. Through our enhancements around the airport. We try and add sort of biodiversity or ecological value and richness to different parts of the environment that we have some sort of control over. And those are those enhancements that we have, which are beyond the statutory requirement. So that's a commitment. And setting up a fund is for perpetuity. It's a $400 million that's an endowment. Yeah. That will go on forever with the interest going up and down, and we can support all sorts of initiatives over the long term, which may enhance, the marine and the terrestrial environments in the future. So, it's a statutory requirement, and then you go beyond the statutory and volunteer to do more at your own cost, which I think we want to do to try and bring back the ecological value of North Lantau to perhaps what it was sort of 10, 15 years ago, or to support that. It's a difficult question.
Well, clearly, if you're raising that kind of money, there is there's you see a value in investing in ecological restoration and so on, right? I mean, maybe that's a good segue to my question to Martin. Is there a return on the investment in these green buildings and green roofs and so on? Martin, can you? No, not Martin. Wouter.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I can answer that.
There's too many Martins.
Yeah, no worries. But there's only one Wouter.
That is true.
Yeah, there is actually there is a return of investment, of course. And there's two ways of looking at this. For example, if you add a green roof to the building with the purpose of delaying your stormwater, then it actually saves you on renewing the sewage system or adding a big water buffering tank in your building that is actually consuming valuable space. So that is a green roof normally is cheaper than doing a renovation of a sewage system. So then you have a return of investment that you see within a year. And the other thing you need to consider is if you don't do this kind of things and you get flooding, then it will cost much more than adding green walls now. That's always difficult also for the politicians to see that you have to implement these regulations for new buildings, because the effects are, well, we don't want to see them, but they are happening.
Yeah.
And if I can answer another question, but you have to allow me, but I see in the question panel that Sophia Lau is asking something about building materials created from waste materials. This is actually something we're already doing. We're not doing it yet in Hong Kong, but hopefully we will do as well. But for example, we have a roof tray that is made from the foam from old beds. So we are working on that, and you see that the industry is also moving to that direction. So it's not only showing that it's green, but also the materials are green itself.
Yeah, sorry, for the pan listening in Hong Kong, the question was actually about, it's okay, building and creating materials that are made from waste products. And she's researching green building materials for a project, and she wanted to hear panelists' views on that. So thank you for answering that question, Wouter. Would you like to jump in on the waste question? If not, I'm going to move.
Are you looking at me or David?
Any of us in Hong Kong. Okay,
I was going to talk about the life cycle, the return on investment, because that is exactly what our green airport design and construction strategy is intended to look at.
Mm-hmm.
You do consider a life cycle assessment. They're difficult to do, but you try and do an energy assessment and work out what aspects of your building you can find savings in, and do a life cycle costing, solar panels, or you're changing to a major switch to LEDs. You have to see, whether it's feasible and whether it's going to elevate the cost too much. With a large project, you sometimes have the ability to influence the market. So if you need 200,000 LED lights for a terminal building, you can get a 40% discount, which makes it suddenly much more possible. So that's another element that factors in bigger buildings, perhaps. Sorry.
All right. No, that's great. I also there's another question for you, by the way, so don't go away. But I am going to sort of move to Martin from the Netherlands. Do you still remember the question?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess you've asked about the mindset. Is there a shift of mindset happening or necessary? Mm-hmm. And I think, on why we're doing is, I think we see two things in a moment. I think on the expert level, IPCC report, no question anymore why we need to do this. But what we also see is now people in their everyday lives start to feel the impact of climate change. Yeah? Crazy storms, flooding, we've heard it. So there is no question about the why anymore. I think that is gone. What we need to do is also becoming clearer and clearer. The airport has statutory requirements. The industry is innovating into it. So we see lots of development in that area here. I think the really tricky thing is how we're actually going to do it. And I think there's maybe two things we can learn. I think one beautiful thing you've mentioned already in both of your Hong Kong strategies is actually you include already looking forward. Yeah? So you include, stay green as an important focus. Don't only think about today, think about the future and how you actually finance it, how you maintain it. Yeah? Or Martin, you talked about monitoring. Yeah? How do you monitor it? How you then can scale it up? I think this is future thinking is really, really important. But I think what is quite tricky is at the beginning of the process is partnering, to bring the right partners into the process. And I think here's really beautiful things to learn from the Netherlands. For example, the city of Rotterdam has at the beginning of this year adapted a massive program called 7 City Projects, which will give a third of the population of Rotterdam walking distance to newly constructed parks. So this project is not a project that is only carried on by the government. It is actually carried on by a group of parties. 27 different parties have signed up to an agreement that includes mobility, employment, real estate, project development, health providers, inclusiveness, climate adaptation, culture, water, greenery. So a whole package of partners that have come in early to kind of sign up to an agenda that is quite inclusive, and then to follow up that agenda through investment input, through expertise input. I think what we also see is that in all of the different areas, people know what to do, but we need to link them together stronger, that everyone can contribute to these complex projects, and then also to stay on board and to follow it up over the years of implementation. So this partnering aspect, I think, is really, really strong. And there's beautiful examples from the Netherlands of how to do that.
Right, thank you for that. I'm just looking at the panel questions from the audience, and there is actually one for you, Martin. Will nature-based solutions would have any priorities in designing infrastructure facilities for the Hong Kong airport? Will be nature solutions, I guess, do nature-based solutions have a role to sort of play in the designing of infrastructure facilities at the airport?
I think they do, but we do have a very constrained development, starting point, basically. We have very functional buildings, and they're there to support very high flows of generally normal situation, passengers and cargo. But I think we've got this embedded green airport design and construction strategy, and that will that's designed to move you're benchmarking against new benchmarks all the time for every facility. So if there's a possibility of incorporating more nature-based solutions, then yes, but in terms of, the available land area for that, I mean, these are functional buildings that have to operate very efficiently. And, I'm not sure there are too many nature-based solution opportunities. I mean, I might be misunderstanding that concept, but
yeah, I think. Sorry,
but Martin, sorry, if I saw your presentation, you're already doing something quite fantastic, actually, because you go beyond the area that is dominated by and has to be, led by infrastructure, and you go into what we as men have not considered to be our responsibility, which is the sea.
The sea, yeah, absolutely.
It's absolutely amazing that you do that. And these are examples where Hong Kong can be leading the world, and actually show how this goes. It's very, very fascinating to hear that.
You can answer all my other questions. That's great.
Yeah, I was actually going to sort of say the same thing. So thank you for raising that, because I think creating, thinking about artificial reefs, that you were sort of like contemplating that would sort of also stall waves and storms, tides, and etc. Right? And I think that this kind of integrated approach to building resilience, I think, is important in the future. As Martin in the Netherlands sort of said, the climate, I guess the reasons for doing this are already here. The IPCC report that he referred to, calls for actually transformative resilience, but it also highlights that none of us are actually doing transformative resilience. It actually calls us out on that. So I think it sort of recognizes that we are all doing some form of adaptation and building resilience, but it is not perhaps transformative enough. So how can we actually push out these boundaries and make it even more sort of transformative? And and, you know, is that an education of the communities that, you know, you sort of like mentioned, David, and obviously financing is key, right? Otherwise, we're not going to sort of like make it happen. And actually financing could also be a limiting factor because you would like to do this project, but you only managed to raise money for this project, right? And so that was fascinating how you could manage to sort of like carve out that amount of space for that. And I think this is where Hong Kong, as a financial hub, you know, with these possibilities, you know, and I think, you know, we don't realize that a lot of Hong Kong is country parks, actually can have the opportunities to sort of like do that, right? But do you sort of, how I sort of feel about this is that I think some people see the urgency and some people don't really see the urgency yet. And some corporates sort of like get it, but how do we get more people on board in this? You know, to sort of share some of the Greater Bay Area experiences here. And, you know, we have an opportunity in Hong Kong, perhaps with the new metropolis and so on. So how would that, you know, how can we share some of these Dutch solutions to sort of like develop new areas or new possibilities in the region? So I guess I'm throwing that out to the Netherlands.
Yeah, I mean, with the Rotterdam City projects, I try to share one example of how we do it here. Bring partners on board early, because I think we need to. The big new thing is we need to do is we don't need to just achieve targets. We need to create synergies, where, you know, two targets together actually achieve more than each target itself can achieve. And for that, we need to bring partners in to do it together. This is what the Rotterdam project does. For example, a famous example from the Netherlands is called Room for the Rivers, where we've been, on one hand, giving more space for natural space for the rivers. We're at the end of the delta of you know, big European river systems. So there's been more room given to it. Yeah? That room benefits, let's say, the blue and green elements, but it also benefits then indirectly, I think rather directly actually onto the people, and then through that onto business and industry. Yeah? And I think that is, I think for Hong Kong also particularly important. You know, Hong Kong needs to stay competitive in the market of Asia, or maybe in the global market even, yeah, to retain talent and to retain industry. And I guess the highly educated people that want to work in the Hong Kong industry, they would definitely want to see you know, the highest quality of life, you know, the highest credentials of the blue and green in nature integrated solutions. Otherwise, they would just move to Singapore. Huh? As simple as that, yeah? Or they, you know, they would move to, I don't know, Korea, or they move to China. So I mean, we need to just stay, let's say, at the pulse of the time and lead again. And it's so beautiful to see that the big project of the Hong Kong airport actually does some of this leadership. It's also beautiful to see that the government actually is leading on the most complicated thing, which is regeneration work. Huh? So actually working in the existing city and transforming the existing city. And then the second area of, I think, of that work that is really important is working along the edges of the city. There's this beautiful relationship between the urban area, the gray jungle, and the green jungle, where the two of them meet. There we have this edge effect, and we can do the most powerful projects. The waterfront, the rivers, along the edge of the mountains, where the transfer between the systems is so easy. I would really, really focus on them. This is what we do a lot in the Netherlands, that we really blend between here and there. In the UK as well, you know, the lifestyle of living in London metropolitan region is a lifestyle that is urban, and at the same time going out into the green. At the same time, in the same week, you can do it. Yeah? So I think these are some areas that I would, you know, really, really try to push on. Yeah, lifestyle change will make a big difference.
Thank you for that. I'm just kind of scoring the questions here. Okay, we have an anonymous attendee asking, how can Hong Kong get more green space within the city? So I'm going to open this to all the panelists, and perhaps also to Wuta over there. You know, how can we grab more, you know, it's a dense place, right? So how can we kind of like carve out more green spaces Anyone want to have a go at this?
I would like to answer that question.
Yep.
That's
Thank you, Ruta.
of course, I'm promoting what we are doing, so my answer will also be in that line, obviously. Now, I think what Hong Kong can do is add much more green walls, for example, in the city, because you already see it's so crowded with all the buildings, and removing a building, that's a step too far. That asks for a lot of investments. The building needs to be bought by the government. It makes it very expensive. So the most easy step is just adding green to your buildings itself. And especially if you talk about biodiversity, but also that people feel like it's a green environment. The last page of my presentation, green feels good. Those are easy steps to do. And you can see it in the Sky City 2 project. At the airport. Unfortunately, I did not go there myself yet, but I've seen the pictures. If you arrive, it's one green facade. It already makes everybody happy. So those solutions can be applied and make it possible. So that would be the answer.
Yeah. And also relating to my presentation today, the government is promoting like the minimum green coverage of new buildings, and also in the new developments, like say, for example, we understand for the Tung Chung New Town extension, which is quite close to the airport, they have been doing a baseline study of biodiversity study, which serve as a backbone for the planning of the green space. And then they are coming up with a network of green space in the new town, say the new reclamation area, so that the whole network with linear parks and in combination with central green and eco shoreline, all becoming a green network superimposed to the urban fabric of the new town. So they are exploring ways to increase greenery in the new developments. And I also note that, say for the Harbourfront Commission, though it is handled by other office, but we know that they have been, say, exploring ways to release space along the coastline of the Victoria Harbour, and also the government is sometimes like imposing, say, lease conditions so that entrust part of the promenade construction works to some area originally occupied by private land, so that maybe developer are constructing promenade and connect together. This is all ways that we have been exploring to provide all open space and green spaces.
Thank you for that. I think we're running out of time, so I think I'm just going to sort of like wrap. Thank you so much for an invigorating discussion. And I think what I've taken away from today, great that it's blue and green. It's not just beautiful, but it has a purpose, right? And actually, we have the solutions already. We can do it, and we can build transformative resilience if we sort of like have the right premise and will to sort of like do this. We need to heed the IPCC, and we need to sort of work together collaboratively, and we need to start now. And with that, I'll leave it at that. And so here's to more livable and sustainable cities going forward in the future. We can absolutely do that, and we must. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to our speakers and moderator for the informative sharing. This also concludes the webinar. An event feedback questionnaire will be sent to you after this webinar. Please take a few moments to fill in the form. If you are interested to know more about future BEC events, please follow our social media channels. Thank you again for joining us today, and have a wonderful evening.